everyone, welcome back to the Earthdawn Survival Guide. This is a podcast for all disciplines, paths, players, game masters, and enthusiasts like Josh and myself. I am, of course, Dan.
I am, of course, Josh.
There we are. On today's podcast, we will be discussing all things
spiritual
and, was it thaumaturgical? Yeah, thaumaturgical. This is about the shaman. We're going to get into the weeds on the mystic paths of the Adept's journey. And I had to illuminate myself, first of all, on where shamans came from. My initial impression has always been, since I started with Shadowrun, and the shaman in there was, I think, linked to the Native American tribes, that's been my understanding forever and a day, is that that's where the word comes from and that's where the mysticism comes from. I was wrong, so I got to clear that up for myself today. Josh, do you know the origin of shaman?
I know it's not native. I think it's Eastern European, Russian?
Very, very good, actually. It is Russian. I did take a look, and I found in a 1917 American Anthropology book this little paragraph I'm going to read. There could never be a serious doubt of the real source from which the word shaman is derived. We received it from the Russians, chiefly Cossack explorers and conquerors of eastern Siberia in the second half of the 17th century, who heard and recorded the term among Tungusian tribes. It was first brought to Europe by so forth and so on, and by Adam Brand, who from 1692 to 1695 accompanied a Russian embassy sent by Peter the Great to China. So it is definitely Russian.
So shaman is not Russian, but the word came to English via Russia, via Russian interactions with the, for lack of a better term, native peoples of the sort of Russian steppes.
Yes.
The folks that you mentioned, Tunguska. I don't think that was the actual, but I immediately thought of the Tunguska blast.
Oh, fair enough.
which is a presumed, at this point, presumed to have been a meteor that entered the atmosphere and detonated, basically ended up exploding not too far above the surface.
Yes.
And leveled a huge swath of wilderness around it.
Did some serious damage
in the early 20th century. But there was, anyway. But the idea that it is tied to Native Americans, to Native American mystical practices, is kind of understandable in a sense, but in kind of a bad way, because its use from what I'm recalling now, its use with regards to its origins among Eastern Europe and Russia was to talk about the mystical practices and beliefs of the natives that they interacted with in that area. And the idea that those spiritual beliefs were primitive and backwards and not in keeping with the right and proper Christian traditions of, the 16th, 17th, 18th century and on. Yeah. And that idea, from Russia and Eastern Europe carried over to the interactions with the European settlers in the Americas and treated them in much the same way. So there is kind of a not great
cultural
there's kind
assumption.
Of a racist undertone. There's kind of like a not great sense of what's going on, with regards to referring to something as a shaman. Yeah.
Because those who had a shaman, the definition just simply means one who knows. So it was their wise person, their medicine person, their healer, their tribal elder, their type
priest,
thing. So,
right?
Yeah.
But basically, because so much of everything is filtered through the white Christian lens.
Yeah.
Of European hegemony and imperialism and everything.
Totally.
That that basically the sense of things that are not Christian, whether that be from the Catholic or the Eastern Orthodox or whatever, as backwards and foolish and misguided and primitive and whatnot,
Assumptive.
whether that's Yeah, there's a really bad cultural history there, even though it may not be something that we in the present day necessarily see as a negative.
Mm-hmm.
Like there is a sense, I think, especially when we get into like the late 20th century and stuff like Dances with Wolves and
Yes.
some of the like the stuff dealing with the Native Americans and dealing with stuff there, and appearances in like Shadowrun and Werewolf the Apocalypse, which has a very strong like Native American shamanistic, for lack of a better term, vibe that goes along with it. Like there is for present day us, there doesn't have that necessarily have that negative connotation that goes along with it, but that history is there, and I think it's worth recognizing that shaman is a term that has been imposed upon certain beliefs and practices and individuals that is not necessarily the term that was originally those.
Or it's been ascribed to them that shouldn't be ascribed to them.
Right. We'll be talking about this within the specific framework of the Earthdawn mechanics and the setting and whatnot, but part of why the shaman is the way it is now in 4th edition, which is kind of different from previous editions, is because of that legacy. And the presentation of the shaman when it originally appeared in Magicka Manual of Mystic Secrets was presented as this is a primitive spellcaster. This is one who uses, again, I don't think that there was necessarily on Fasa's part, like there
wasn't any bad intent.
There wasn't any, I don't think there was any bad intent, but the presentation within the framework of Magicka Manual of Mystic Secrets and how, the shaman doesn't use spell matrices. They are not like advanced in their spellcasting techniques the way that wizards and nethermancers and elementalists and such are. These are the magic users of the tribes like the Cathan and
the
various other places. There is a
This is the country mouse spellcasters, the city mouse spellcasters the rest of us are.
Yeah, and but it's just these are the primitive ones, and they don't they get a smattering of spells from various disciplines that all maybe are thematic one way or the other, but they're limited. Like they've got the rather than the spell matrix, which is a pure astral construct. They've got the fetish. They've got this device that's required. Again, I don't think intentionally presented. It certainly, I don't think that there was a bad intent on the part of the original creators of the shaman, but there is a lot of like the fetish and the primitivity and stuff draws on a lot of really kind of problematic sociology and anthropology from previous generations that had not necessarily been as deeply examined and deconstructed in the early to mid 90s compared to today, 25 25 years later.
And not culturally corrected for the record either.
And I may be inaccurate on some of this because the shaman discipline in 4th edition is the work largely of Morgan. And there were sort of two goals with this. One was to break the shaman out to be a unique spellcasting discipline in its own right. Okay. That is to still in some respects pay homage to the authentic, again, for lack of a better term, shamanistic traditions of various non-Christian practitioners, drawing a little bit, animistic traditions and spiritual traditions and things like that from various places without it obviously being, this is this culture just transported to Earthdawn, but just kind of taking some inspiration from that and to make it a unique and special discipline on its own, but one that is more in tune in a sense with the natural world and the spirits of the natural world in the way that is distinct from the Nethermancer and the Elementalist, which are the other two summoning spirit disciplines, the shaman being the third one.
Yeah.
And as part of that, introducing a new class of spirit, the beast spirit, which is distinct from the ally spirit of the Nethermancer or the elementals of the Elementalist. And having the in-character narrative, the essay about the shaman, talking about that, drawing on some of those ideas. So that's kind of where the 4th edition shaman came from, and more or less perhaps thinking about it in a way that maybe the presentation of the shaman in earlier editions is kind of like, 19th century anthropologists reporting on other cultures without recognizing what's actually going on and framing it all through the lens of Western hegemony and whatnot.
Yeah.
In kind of that sense.
Agreed. So I think this makes a nice distinguishing case for the uniqueness of the shaman, even though there's a small Venn diagram with the spirits and the elementalists and the necromancers. But I think this is a nice distinguishing set of characteristics. The essay was beautifully done. I grabbed 2 lines from there that I love, that I think really encapsulates where any player should come across and begin their path of making the shaman. First quote I got was, "The world is connected. We are all part of the whole." As in, we are all part of the entirety. So I think that's one place to start looking at your character from. And the second line I got was, "Kindness is a more powerful tool than cruelty." I love both of those. So whoever wrote that, kudos. I like them. I'm going to use those. I'm going to, just keep them in the back of my head, whatever. And really, those 2 quotes alone made me want to create a shaman today. I didn't have time for it, but I wanted to.
The other thing that I'm really happy about with the shaman essay is that the shaman that presents that is a non-binary character. Again, through our efforts of dealing with diversity and varied points of view and whatnot, not only do we have a character who philosophically presents something that is very different in some regards, the philosophy of the kindness and the everything being connected, but also a non-binary, like canon non-binary character is, I think, something that is important.
I agree. So it's again, wonderful distinctions to make on the uniqueness of this discipline to follow. So to run down, like we always have done for any discipline we're going through, 15 minutes into the episode, shamans are, of course, spellcasters, and they specialize in the magic of life, spirits, and animals. So this is your tree hugger, your nature lover, your echo.
This is your druid.
This is your druid. For lack of a better term.
This is I think the Earthdawn take on the druid.
Yeah. So if you are used to playing,
I don't think that was really the goal when set out. But there was a lot of thematic overlap there. But that's basically like, this is sort of the Earthdawn take on the druid.
Yeah. This is your hippie. I'm just teasing. I'm teasing. So, of course, because they're a spellcaster, the important attributes are naturally perception and willpower, because spellcasters galore. Fair enough. The karma ritual I thought was very cool as well. They walk a circle, make a square inside that. They sit in the middle. They extend their senses to the area, and then they kind of conjure a nice little spirit to come into the circle. And it manifests in corporeal form once it breaches the circle, and they kind of pet it for 30 minutes. And yeah, that's kind of a cool thing. I like that. It's nice, artsy and passive.
And reflects the connection of the shaman with the spirit world, with the natural spirit world, with the beasts, and whatnot. And again, the grooming and the caretaking, as opposed to a domination. There's a partnership. There's an equality that's kind of present within that interaction, that is called out. Compared to, say, the there's the Nethermancer karma ritual as presented in the book talks about like the tea ceremony and the discussion and the conversation. And so there is kind of a kinship and whatnot there, but ally spirits are generally kind of presented as people more than the beast spirits are. beast spirits are people in a sense. Animals can be in their own way, can be people, but it's a very different situation.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah. It's more give and take, more mutual respect. Sorry. But the artisan skills, I think, are right up the alley as well in the appropriate places. Dancing and tattooing.
And these kind of play into the stereotypical images of the natural animistic, shamanistic belief systems that kind of serve as vague inspiration for this. And that is that, dancing can be a very ceremonial thing. Tattooing, marking, body painting, a lot of the more wild and naturalistic artisan skills, like the same kind of ones that you would see perhaps with a Beastmaster. Yes. There are some similarities between the Shaman and the Beastmaster in that regard.
I was going to say, the essay actually brought up body painting a little bit, but it wasn't listed as an artisan skill. I really do think it should be there, but just me. So the half magic ability for shamans is also unique. I'm going to use that word a lot, and I'm sorry about that, but that's just one of those things. This is to detect the presence of beast spirits within 30 yards. So I think that's cool. And it's also always active. So the game master might have to take control of that to say, by the way, you're sensing one over there.
Yeah,
and
it's similar. I mean, Nethermancers and Elementalists have the half magic abilities that do the same thing for the type of spirits that they're associated with.
Yeah.
So it's not really unique in that regard.
Yeah, I'm sorry. But it's still cool. That word this time. It is very cool. I'm just going to overuse the word unique. Sorry. I'm really going to try and hammer home that they are individuals in this sense. So, other than that, on to the talents. So, durability is still 3 because they're a spellcaster. Just like all the other spellcasters. Yeah. They get 2 free talents, and this is the cool thing about spellcasters in Earthdawn. Your matrices are free. No longer fetishes.
You get 2 matrices for free. One of the things that doesn't really get addressed with any of the spellcasters, generally speaking, but is especially true, I think, for the shaman, is that there's very little that is talked about in terms of the trappings that would go along with the magician's spellcasting. Mm-hmm. And that I could see a shaman having, again, for lack of a better term, like fetishes, having devices or things that they have that they use in the course of their spellcasting. It's just not required for them to have that, as that's where their spells are contained and whatnot, as in previous editions.
Yeah.
From a mechanical standpoint, they have matrices that work the same way as the matrices of other magicians. It just may be that the trappings, that the style, like I could see a Nethermancer, for example, might incorporate using bones or whatever as part of their set dressing.
Yeah.
For the spell casting.
No, I had a player who made a shaman character and loved the idea of the fetish. And so every single spell, like his flame whip spell, was actually a strip of leather that he had to hold in his hand that would catch fire, and that was how he would cast a spell. So he specifically sought out the right fetish for the specific spell he was going to use.
Right.
Which I am going to bring up, but we're not going to talk about it, is the fact that doesn't that therefore make that a spell matrix object type thing? So...
No.
Fair enough.
No, because a spell matrix object has a specific game mechanical function.
Yeah.
And just having an item that is used as part of the casting of a spell does not make that a spell matrix object. It is a material component. It is something, again, the descriptions of the spells in the various rulebooks do present the typical way that a spell is cast, like the earth darts, they pick up some dirt and they whatever, and it forms the crystals that then fly.
Yeah.
There is an aspect of that that's kind of involved with all the various spells. And, when he wants to do the flame whip, he has this piece of leather that he uses, and as he's weaving the threads or whatever, and it catches flame, and that basically becomes the whip that he uses. That's fine. From a game mechanic standpoint, that doesn't make it a spell matrix. It doesn't make it a spell. It doesn't make it a matrix object.
Yeah.
That is something with a very specific definition and purpose. But no, that kind of thing is choosing the trappings, the material components and whatnot that fit your character's style and whatnot, and can reflect their philosophy on their discipline and be a nice kind of role-playing aspect.
Yeah. I just wanted to head off one of the questions at the pass on, is that a spell matrix object, since the fetish was there. So
I don't know why anybody... Well, okay. Anyway.
Just in case. Heading that one off at the pass. So that question's been answered. Okay. On to the actual discipline talents. Of course, 3 of these are going to be obvious. The pattern craft, learning spells, the thread weaving, obviously, and spellcasting, obviously. So aside from those 3, because we're going to be a long episode tonight, awareness. The shaman obviously being one that is supposed to be in tune with the natural world. Mm-hmm. Awareness goes along with that and plays very nicely in with their normally higher perception. Yes. And then wilderness survival, which is a big duh because, yeah, it's where they tend to reside. Not always, but tend to reside. So how they should get along in the wilderness, absolutely. And just noticing the natural world around them, tracks, hunting, foraging, all that, how the trees do, how nature works. Yeah, wilderness survival, right up their alley. So second circle, they get a beginning +1 to mystic defense. Typical for a magician. Yep. And they get the discipline talent of astral sight. Similar to other magicians, especially the Nethermancer, the ability to see astrally, to get a sense of what the astral environment is in the area that they are working, the ability to perhaps see beast spirits or other spiritual entities, all plays again to the awareness that was mentioned, and that awareness now extends into the astral dimension. Yeah. So I have nothing to quarrel with on any of these, really. I looked through the first 4 circles and said, yep, I agree with everything. This is where I would have put absolutely every single thing here. Third circle, they get a karma point to spend on a summon or interact with a spirit. So, as it should be, really. And the discipline talent of spirit talk. Again, be able to talk to spirits. that's what they're kind of focused around. So there is some discussion because this is the same talent as the Nethermancers get. Mm-hmm. And basically the question has come up, does spirit talk that the shamans get, does that allow them to talk both to ally spirits and beast spirits? Or and the shaman and the Nethermancer then likewise? Mm-hmm. Or is this a situation where the talent name is the same, but it's limited to only the type of spirits that they deal with? I don't have strong opinions either way. I think Morgan has given his official answer on that somewhere. This is one of those cases where if I could go back, I would probably change elemental tongues, which is the elementalist equivalent of this, and make spirit talk just a single talent that works the same for everybody, but is limited by type. Fair. So I would be inclined to say the spirit talk for Nethermancers relates to ally spirits. The spirit talk for shaman relates to beast spirits. But if you want to just have it be the same or maybe require an extra success or something, the rules might actually... I was going to say the rules, obviously, of spirit talk in the player's guide don't specify because at the time it was written, beast spirits didn't exist yet. Fair. I would personally go with the latter if I were the game master, which is your own familiar type of spirits is one success level, is the regular success level, and a different kind of spirit is a higher success level, just because you're not as familiar with their ways and means. So that's just me. Fourth circle, the shaman gets a +1 to their physical defense, which makes sense. You're going to have a second one in there somewhere. And then, of course, they get danger sense, which is also always active. I love that one. Yeah. Yep. Danger sense. We've talked about this with other disciplines. It's, again, kind of an expansion of the broad theme of awareness that shamans get. This basically allows them, much like an animal, to sense an ambush or to sense some kind of danger or trouble that might cause them difficulty. Yes. So it's really... at the moment, for the first 4 circles, really sink your points into your perception right off the bat. Gonna need that one heavily. So onto the options for the first 4 circles. Some of these are going to revolve around animals, as we know, because again, they are nature and animal centric. So animal bond and animal training are options. You don't have to run that kind of shaman, but you can if you want to.
If you're going to be a common multi-discipline combination in some regards, obviously the shaman is relatively new, so it hasn't like shaken out a whole lot yet, but I would see a beastmaster / shaman being a fairly common combination.
That was my first go-to, yeah.
Because of the relationship with the natural world and animals and things like that. Obviously, in that case, you wouldn't need to pick up Animal Bond or Animal Training because you have them as a Beastmaster. But if you are going for an animal companion-y type shaman, like the character in the book who has a wolf companion, a frost wolf, winter wolf, some kind
winter
of
wolf.
actual animal companion.
Yes, winter wolf.
That can be done. So there are talents that you can pick up to go along that route.
Yeah. Avoid blow. And if you don't know what avoid blow is by now, you really haven't been paying attention.
Standard useful defensive talent, where the shaman does tend to be a little bit more physical in terms of their style and whatnot, mirroring the natural world. Avoid blow makes sense as something that's available, and it's just generally useful. I think it's in just about everybody's talent list at some point.
Yeah, pretty much. So nice option to have. Recommend it. Climbing, because again, I think since you are a wilderness type character, climbing is never a bad thing to getting up a tree at the very least. One of those things. And then creature analysis, I think, is totally in their wheelhouse, but I wouldn't know what discipline talent to take out to put creature analysis in. So as an option, a good thing to have. Because again, you don't have to play the animal centric shaman if you don't want to.
No, you don't necessarily need to play a shaman that is going to have actual animal companions the way that a Beastmaster would. Mm-hmm. But those tools are available there for those who want to go that route. Yeah.
And then enhance animal companion, again, animal centric thing. So if you have one, great, go for it. Those are your animal talents. Navigation, I think, is again right up their alley, but
yeah, dealing with wild places and whatnot, being able to get from place to place, probably presented less so like the scout navigation, which is a more traditional sextant and guiding by the stars kind of thing, and more of the way that animals navigate, like birds, for example. Some species of birds at least have an awareness of magnetic fields and are guided by the Earth's magnetic field and things like that.
Totally. Then, of course, another standard matrix as an option. So if you'd like to grab a third matrix at any of the first 4 circles, feel free. Just means more spells at the
extra
ready.
Matrices. I am of the spellcasting type that is of the more matrices flavor. The more spells that you can have ready to go at a moment's notice, the more versatile your toolkit.
Absolutely. And then the last 2 options, stealthy stride and tracking. Moving
I don't
quietly.
think we need to say too much about either of those. Stealthy stride goes right along nicely with the wilderness.
Yep.
Tracking, likewise. If you're dealing with kind of a rangery, slightly more of maybe in a scout direction, which also has some wilderness associations, as opposed to animal companion beastmaster type.
So I have 0 qualms with any of these things and how they're laid out and exactly what is going on with the first 4 circles. So on to 5th circle, because 5th circle is where all kinds of things happen for all kinds of disciplines. They get a free talent, they get a special ability, they get karma, and of course the discipline talent. So there's a bunch of stuff going on here. They get the free talent of one of your standard matrices is upgraded to an enhanced matrix.
Again, typical spellcaster progression at 5th circle. That happens for everybody.
So nothing unique there. Sorry. And then I'm going to skip the pack leadership real quick. The discipline talent is summon beast spirits, which makes all kinds of sense.
The summon talent becoming available at 5th circle for elementalists and neithermancers, and it's for beast spirits. It's the new category of spirits that was introduced with the shaman.
And then karma ability, they get to spend a point of karma to gain the benefit of an extra thread woven for increased effect on a spell with a binding or spirit keyword in the title. Yeah, that doesn't suck.
So basically what this means is that if a shaman is casting a spell that has the binding or spirit keyword, and that's included basically at the beginning of the spell description, the rules text for the spell.
Yeah.
They can spend a point of karma to add the benefit of an extra thread. They don't actually have to weave that thread. They just spend the karma point and are able to do that.
Very cool. because you just get the mechanic of just by, okay, I got karma to burn, baby, let's go. And it's only one karma point at a time, or can they stack karma on that? Like 2 and 3 points of karma at a time?
May spend a karma point.
Okay.
Like all of these karma abilities, it's just you can only spend 1 karma point from a given source.
Just making sure we don't get any questions on it later.
No, this is not like I'm going to spend 5 karma when casting the spell and gain like 5. No.
Okay.
If you want to get that many benefits of extra threads, you can spend 1 karma point, but you're otherwise limited to however many extra threads that you can weave based on your talent.
Yes. So
The bonus you get from the karma point, by the way, does not count towards that limit.
okay. Making sure we cleared that up. So
Yep, it's right there in the rules text.
we like questions, but we're trying to head a couple of them off at the pass. So on to the pack leadership ability at 5th circle. This is a couple of paragraphs here. It's a 30-minute ritual. They spend a drop of blood on some shamanism rank allies, marking them and taking a blood point magic damage for each ally. And this is a personal glyph that's painted on their ally. This is also spend one strain point per target to affect all named targets within the range of the spell. So basically this acts like a spell. The adept does not have to affect all eligible targets. You must pay 1 additional karma point per target. The spell is a binding keyword. Using this ability replaces the normal number of targets for the spell, and extra threads cannot increase the number of targets. So, yeah.
So this kind of plays into the theme of the shaman as dealing with the group and all as one and things like that. That basically they can designate a pack and they can do funky things with their magic when they're dealing with their pack, their designated collection of companions that they have marked with this ability. And this kind of plays with one of the things I think that Morgan was doing with his work on the shaman was playing with some of the things that relate to the magician as a support type, like with buffing their allies and whatnot.
Yeah.
One of the things that you would notice if you look at the shaman spells is that the buff spells are all based off of a fixed difficulty number instead of being the target's mystic defense.
Yeah.
This is to kind of help forestall, get around the one of the things that we discovered with playtesting and early development after the player's guide, and that is that casting buff spells on higher mystic defense characters, especially as their bonuses and circle and stuff go up, can get kind of frustrating.
Fair.
And so buff spells, beneficial spells, there's no real reason from a gameplay standpoint to not do something like that. And so the pack leadership basically gives the shaman some tools to really kind of play around with enhancements and buffs and things like that for their group that kind of gets around the normal restrictions that come into play for those types of spells.
Fair enough. So on to 6th circle. That's a lot of stuff to take in at 5th. That's, like I said, things happen at 5th circle. 6th circle, they get an additional bonus to their mystic defense, now up to a +2.
It's a standard progression, yeah.
Yep. And the discipline talent is will force because spellcaster, 6th circle.
Because it's a spellcaster, you get your will force, you get your effect boosting talent there at 6th circle the same way that all the other magicians do.
Yeah. So they're equal across the board for the other spellcasters so far. On to 7th circle. They get a +1 to their initiative, finally. And their discipline talent is life sight.
Yes, this is and we're going to talk about this when we get into our Astral Sight episode.
Oh, yes.
In another couple of weeks. But Life Sight is a specialized form of Astral Sight that only looks for specific things, but does some more things than normal Astral Sight because it's specialized.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's again kind of more of the awareness of the natural world and the living things within it.
Agreed. 8th circle, they get another bonus to their mystic defense, now at a +3, as again they're spellcasters and they should. But they also get Lionheart as a
This is the fear boosting talent, allows them to resist and shake off fear effects more easily.
Yeah.
This is fairly typical for the Beastmaster gets it. It's actually not an uncommon talent that's available.
Yeah, a lot of other disciplines have had this as well. So on to the options. And again, there's the 3 of them already that I see are still animal-centric. And we've covered those in the Beastmaster episode, and I believe also in the Cavalryman episode. Animal Companion Durability, Animal Talk, and Call Animal Companion. Those are pretty, I can't say self-explanatory. We've covered them before. Got a lot of ground to cover today. But we also have Anticipate Blow, since we had Avoid Blow at the Journeyman, at the Novice talent option, sorry. Anticipate Blow now at Journeyman, because I was reading one word.
That is defensive with a little bit of offensive capability. If you are going with a build for Shaman that ends up potentially being a little bit more close combat, Anticipate Blow is a nice thing to have as a talent in your toolkit.
Yeah. Borrow Sense.
From the sort of Beastmaster kit, if you're going to have animal companions, the ability to increase your awareness or perception abilities even more, or extend beyond the normal range of name giver capability, is certainly something that can be useful.
Very nice to have. And alphabetically speaking, the Enhanced Matrix, since you're at 5th circle, your standard matrix becomes enhanced anyway. If you would like a second Enhanced Matrix, here you are. And then Safe Path, which I think is wonderful because the Scout has that as well as the Shaman.
Scout has that. Safe Path always kind of also associated with spirits. I think the original sort of write-up of it kind of plays it in an elemental sense, but Safe Path from the Shaman side would probably relate more with the beast spirits.
I agree. Spirit Mount, which I think is a wonderful thing.
That seems self-explanatory.
Yes. And
it's animal, it's spirit, it's...
Conjure a bear spirit and ride it, baby. That just sounds awesome.
Yeah.
And naturally, because you're a spellcaster, you should have Steel Thought. It's an option. Pick it up.
Yeah, there's not really any place to put that as a discipline talent, but making it available as an option as a defensive, mystic defense enhancing kind of ability is definitely makes sense for the Shaman.
Because I couldn't see taking away Summon, Will Force, or Life's, or Summon or Will Force. I don't want to wait till 7th circle to get it as discipline talent. So I'd rather have it as an option. I can get it earlier. So I think that's a good place for that to be as in the options list, even though it's, for me, required. But that's just me. And then the final talent option at Journeyman is Tenacious Weave.
Spellcast boosting. Tenacious Weave makes it more difficult to dispel spells, where the Shaman, a lot of their kit, even more than other spellcasters, relies on spells that are affecting allies or enemies in various ways. Making those spells more difficult to dispel, if you're going to be using those a lot, is definitely something to consider.
Totally. So on to 9th circle, which we don't usually get to with the other disciplines, but we did with the Gauntlet, and we're doing it now. So they get Spirit Pact, which is almost literally a page long. So how about you summarize that for us as quickly as you can? Or hang on, as succinctly. How's that?
Basically, yeah. So basically, the Shaman gets the ability to form a pact with a powerful named spirit. Mm-hmm. It basically provides some enhancements to their summoning by having this pact. Whenever they summon a spirit, they can basically make it better. It's easier for them to get spirits with the powers that they want. They just basically get a whole bunch of useful spirit-related stuff as a result of this.
Which is why it's a big, long list that we're not going to exactly go into.
Yeah. They take some blood magic damage. They swear an oath with a particular named spirit. And there are, I think, later in the book, when it gets into the spirits, some examples of spirits that could be taken as patrons for the pact. But it basically provides boosts to the magicians, to the shaman's summoning abilities.
Nice. So the discipline talent they get at 9th circle is the summoning circle.
Yeah, this is it's a talent similar to the shaman, or similar to the elementalist and the nethermancer. It basically allows them to be even more effective if they have time to create the circle and do the ritual. It makes them even more effective at their summoning stuff.
Fair. And they get the ability to spend a point of karma on recovery tests at 9th circle.
Which is
always
useful.
On the 10th circle, they get the discipline talent of Spirit Covenant.
I don't know what that
Well,
does.
while you look that up, they also get a +2 to their physical defense, and they get a +1 to their mystic armor. Finally, an armor boost at 10th circle.
Spirit Covenant. So in order to use the Spirit Covenant talent, they need to have the Spirit Pact, which is the Ninth Circle ability that we discussed a minute ago. Basically, it allows them to do funky stuff with spirits. Like, against summoned spirits, the adept can assume the agreement of a summoned spirit for however long it remains, plus additional, it allows them to negotiate with a free spirit as if it were summoned. It basically gives them some more funky stuff that they can do with spirits.
Fair. And it's 10th circle, so that's going to be nice and powerful on that.
Yeah. The shaman really plays with summoning and spirit interactions in some interesting ways, especially when they get into these higher circles.
On to 11th circle, they get their first bonus to their social defense, because they finally have one of those to be filled in or so. And then the ability to spend a point of karma to gain the benefit of an extra thread woven for increased range on a spell with pack or spirit keyword listed. So they actually get to spend karma on some extra range for an extra thread's worth of range. And then the discipline talent of Lion Spirit.
Lion Spirit is similar to Lion Heart, is that it boosts defenses in relation to fear effects.
Nice.
It's another one that makes the shaman difficult to frighten and scare and do that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. So then at 12th circle, they finally get a total of +4 to their mystic defense and a +2 to their initiative from the base initiative, and the discipline talent of concise casting.
This is the standard 12th circle talent for all spellcasters. It makes it does some stuff to enhance their spellcasting ability even further.
So onto the options that you can get at 9, 10, 11, or 12. Armor mount. If you took all the animal talents earlier, then provide your mount some actual armor. Armored matrix, which is
another matrix ability.
Yep. Banish, which if you're going to conjure all these spirits, you make...
It comes later for Shaman than it does for Nethermancers and Elementalists, who get it in their Journeyman options. Because of the way that Shamans relate to spirits, they tend not to be ones that are forcing spirits to go away. They would much rather negotiate and work with spirits rather than force them to go away. But Shamans generally do not get along with insect spirits.
Yes.
Because insect spirits do a lot to kind of disrupt the natural order of things. And the Banish talent can be used against other types of spirits as well. So it could also be used against ally spirits or elementals that might be causing problems in an area. So it is something that a spirit-focused shaman might want to add to their kit so that they've got that available to deal with those.
Blood share, which doesn't necessarily have to be used with an animal companion, but,
It's a Beastmaster. It's commonly associated with Beastmasters and Cavalrymen. The ability to take on or transfer damage between yourself and a willing target.
And then on to Bloodhound form, which is...
That is a high circle Beastmaster ability that we haven't actually talked about before, but it is described in the companion. Bloodhound form... Basically, it's a bonus to tracking.
That makes sense.
It provides a bonus to tracking tests and also allows the adept to track without actual tracks.
There you go.
They can send, like, tracking normally requires you to find a track that you can touch to form that connection to the target. Bloodhound form doesn't require that. If you're tracking, you can just track them through the air.
Yeah. Okay. I like that one. Dispel magic. Because again, your spellcaster...
Again, this is something that's typically made available a little bit sooner for other magician disciplines, but the ability to disrupt rival spellcasters is worth picking up if you're going to be one that's going to be dealing with spells and magic more frequently.
And then on to 4 left. Eagle Eye.
Eagle Eye is a perception enhancer.
And perception is very heavy, at least in the first 4 circles. And then on. Hold Thread. Because again... spellcaster.
This is one... Hold Thread is normally available as a discipline talent to other magicians. It's an option for Shaman.
Which is fine.
And I think it's fine. Hold Thread is a iffy talent in some regards. It's always been a little bit tough to balance and maybe not necessarily considered worthwhile.
Fair.
I don't know. We won't get into that now.
Orbiting Spy. One of my absolute favorites.
That's a spirit talent. Nethermancers get it. Wizards get it. Even though wizards don't typically deal with spirits, but basically it allows you to toss up a little thing in the air to keep an eye out.
And then Tiger Spring, which is your initiative booster, which finally
It's an initiative booster, strongly animal flavored, which makes sense for the shaman.
So on to the last 3 circles of the shaman. So if this hasn't been enough to whet your appetite to make one, I'm just kidding. Let's see where we can go from here. So they get a bunch of things happen at 13th circle again. So they get Spirit Fuse. They get a +3 to their physical defense. They get a +1 Karma Step to it now goes up to a D8 instead of a D6. They get a +1 recovery test per day now. And then, of course, they get the discipline talent of Ancient Bonds.
So Spirit Fuse is basically an enhancement to the Spirit Pact that they first got access to at Ninth Circle. They do another ritual that boosts their summoning abilities even more. They gain additional successes on any binding or spirit spells and can imbue the spell with the power of their pact as a free action. Adding the spirit keyword to it allows them to make any spell that they cast a spirit spell, which means that they get the extra success. Yes. 13 circles, banana stuff.
It just stacks on and stacks on and stacks on.
Ancient Bonds allows them to cast spells through a spirit. This would potentially allow them to target the spirit, allows them to maybe target the spirit with self-range spells. So something that normally they could only use on themselves, they can actually use on the spirit. And it also allows them to experience the spirit's senses and get +2 to tests related to those senses. Yeah. It's a funky talent that does some more funky spirit magic.
Is that official? Is that the official description? Funky
spirit magic.
I'm just teasing. On to 14th circle. Let's everybody get there. They end up with a +5 to their base mystic defense. They have a +2 to their base mystic armor. This is all awesome. And the discipline talent of Soul Aegis.
Soul Aegis. This is a talent that's available to wizards, maybe nethermancers. I don't know the high circle stuff right off the top of my head.
No, it's been a while since we wrote it. Or the creative team wrote it.
Soul Aegis, they make a test, and each success increases their mystic and social defense by +2 for a number of rounds equal to their rank in Soul Aegis.
Yeah, that can't suck.
It's a powerful defensive talent.
Booster there, yeah. On to 15th circle, and we still have options to go after this. 15th circle, they have a +2 total to their social defense. So that is, +5 mystic, +2 social, and I think +1 physical overall at the end of this thing.
No, it's +3 physical.
+3 physical defense. I'm sorry.
It's 5, 3, 2. 5 mystic, 3 physical, 2 social.
I lost track of counting. There's a lot of pluses here.
Yeah, they get the 3rd physical defense at 13th circle.
And then they also get +3 steps to their total initiative. So by 15th circle, +3 steps to initiative, and the discipline talent of Spliced Weave.
This is a standard spellcasting boost. It allows them to, once per round, abbreviate their thread weaving process. It's Claw Frenzy or multi-attack or multi-shot, but for thread weaving.
Oh, very nice. Since we hadn't gotten to the higher circles of the other spellcasters.
So normally you can make 1 thread weaving test per round. And if you roll really well on that thread weaving test, you may weave multiple threads. What you can do with Spliced Weave, and this is really nice in conjunction with Concise Casting as well, because Concise Casting, let me double check here, basically allows you to cast more than 1 spell in a round. It allows you to do 1 spell as a simple action and a second spell as its standard action. Nice. And so you can do Spliced Weave allows you to do multiple thread weaving tests. Basically, you can start doing some really
awesome,
potentially bananas stuff. What Spliced Weave would allow you to do is, instead of making 1 thread weaving test, like if you're going for extra threads especially, instead of making 1 thread weaving test where you're trying to get, say, 4 or 5 successes or more in order to get all the threads required for the spell, plus any extra threads you may be weaving and that sort of thing, you do spliced weave instead and make multiple thread weaving tests, each of which may only be, so that if like you're not rolling well or whatever, but you can make 6 thread weaving tests in a single round, each of them against a difficulty number 6 or whatever, as opposed to 1 where you're going against a 25. Your steps are going to be really high at that point anyway, so it might not be super crazy, but this basically allows you to really make sure that you're doing the stuff appropriately, making sure you're getting your spells off.
Fair enough. So onto the options. Now remember, this is just the master talent option list. You only get one at 13th, one at 14th, one at 15th. You only get 3 of these, and all are cool, but you only get 3. Animal leadership.
That kind of is in line with the animal themes and the pack themes, the group themes of the shaman. This is available to beastmasters. I don't think it's available to cavalrymen because of their traditional focus on just one mount at a time. But beastmasters get it. And so it plays in the kind of the beastmaster space that shaman overlaps with.
Chameleon.
Hiding in nature allows you to blend in. Again, this is another talent kind of taken from the beastmaster space.
Echolocation, which I always thought was awesome.
It's another beastmaster talent. It adds your rank in echolocation to all awareness tests and negates any darkness penalties within the area.
So nice to use. Effect pattern.
This is a borrowed from spellcasters. I think Wizard Nethermancer might get it as well. They roll this, and for each success, it adds to the effect test for the spell.
Nice. This
is on top of Will Force. Will Force already adds to effect or replaces willpower for effect. Effect pattern would add on top of that even farther.
As it should. Nether Walk, which I think Nethermancers get.
That's a Nethermancer talent. That basically allows you to enter and traverse astral space, which is not always safe, but is really cool.
And fun to do. Resist Pain.
Resist Pain is a great talent. It's pretty basic, but for each rank in Resist Pain, you can ignore 1 wound for the purposes of the penalties that it applies.
And that right there is worth its weight. All the legend points you're going to spend on it. Another shared matrix. Actually, I think your first actual shared matrix.
This is another spell matrix. This is one that allows you to put multiple spells into one matrix. The total circle of the spells in there cannot be the sum of the circles of the spells in there cannot be more than the rank of the matrix. You get that high enough and you can have a lot of low circle spells ready to go.
Absolutely. And that's all kinds of fun. And then the last option, remember, only get 3 of these. Last option, Unflinching Fortitude.
That's really simple. It just adds its rank to the character's wound threshold.
That's nice, because not a lot of things affect the wound threshold.
Group patterns. There's, I think, Temper Self boosts the wound threshold. I think that's a weaponsmith talent that does it. Right. That's also kind of a higher ranking talent. But Unflinching Fortitude is just there's no test or anything. It's just a flat bonus to wound threshold.
Yeah. So I am seriously debating my next character being a shaman. I don't want anything to happen to my scout, but just in case, my game master might be listening to this episode. Shaman's coming up, dude. So if my scout gets killed, Shaman's coming next.
If Virag picks up a second discipline, Shaman is the one that it would be. Because the Shaman plays into Virag's thing of being like a spirit naturalist and whatnot. So that would be... I don't know that I would, but if I picked up a second discipline on Virag, this is the one that I would be steering toward.
There's enough overlap to make it easier to do, but there's also enough distinction to make it fun to explore both sides of the spirit world.
Shaman, from discussion and whatnot, we didn't even get into the spells. We'll get into that in a later episode.
We don't have time for that
today. The Shaman is... The 4th edition version of the Shaman is incredibly popular.
Yes.
The Shaman and the Gauntlet, people are basically like, the Paths book is worth picking up just for those alone, let alone all of the other stuff that's in there. But the addition of Beast Spirits, I really like. The spells that the Shaman gets really show what we have learned about spell design and whatnot, and so forth. So the lessons taken from Shaman are being applied to the Magic Deeper Secrets book that Morgan is working on, which is going to be bringing in even more spells for the magician disciplines, as well as I think the shaman, including some higher circle stuff. The lessons that are learned there, definitely. I really like the shaman. I like conceptually what it does. I like mechanically what it like. The shaman is just really, really cool, and I'm so happy that it has been well received. I like that it has been shaped into its own distinctive thing and fills a niche that is kind of common in fantasy gaming. Again, like we said, it's sort of the Earthdawn take on the druid in one sense. And I like that it kind of fills that space, but is still recognizably Earthdawn and is kind of separated a little bit from the awkward presentation and description of, oh, these are the primitive spellcasters from their original creation. Again, as we said, there was nothing like negative, no bad intent presented there, but 20 years of hindsight.
Yeah, we can
just change the way that you look at it. We can
correct that perception, and that's fine. So I'm going to quote Josh, shamans are great.
Shamans are great.
So I in learning the fact that the shaman actually stems from Russian, as far as the word is concerned, or at least the vernacular is concerned, it's
actually very kind of appropriate.
It is.
That because if you want to take the ancient Earth geographic parallels, Barsave is Ukraine, is that kind of Russia area, and so shaman being something that is located there actually kind of makes a certain amount of sense.
And my wife reads a lot of Russian folklore. It's a hobby of hers. Because hobbies cost money, she reads a lot of folklore books. Russian folklore has a plethora of spirits laced throughout all the folklore. So I really do find that this is, I can't say come full circle, but in my mind, this whole thing now has coalesced into a unified vision for me that I'm really beginning to make a character around it. So dice will be rolling here pretty soon on just me creating a character, finding a name and all that fun stuff. So that's what I've got in mind for my guy, at least coming up. So any final thoughts that we have not covered ground on in the last hour about shamans? Because I think, like I said, this is inspiring to me.
We've talked about it. I've said all that
you're pleased with how the whole thing came out and is put on paper.
I am, yeah. Morgan did really good work mechanically and steering the freelancer who did the writing on that.
No, and honestly, one of my favorite essays out of all 25 years of Earthdawn, one of my favorite essays at all. As I said, I found 2 fantastic lines in there that I'm going to use and try and commit to memory as much as possible, which I don't say. I've never said before about any essay for Earthdawn. That's the one I'm going to stick with a lot. So if you have any questions for us about shamans, how to make one, why to do it a certain way, and your input on the mysticism and nomenclature, please drop us a line at edsgpodcast@gmail.com.
And as of this recording, obviously, we have not yet started to receive emails about the Astral Sight thing, but please get them to us. And because of when this is going up, get them to us soon, because we are likely to be recording the Astral Sight episode not too long after this goes up. That'll be sort of the next deep dive weed exploration that we'll get into.
We forewarned you, and I do mean a warning. We forewarned you last episode to get us questions about astral sight and astral sensing. This is your second warning, second and final. It's coming up soon.
Yep.
So until next time, folks, it is time for you to go commune with your legendary spirit.
Have a good night, everybody.